Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to my channel for another Hot Toys Pose Session. Now today we're going to be focusing our posing attention on none other than the Spider Armor Mark IV version of Spider-Man. As with the previous Pose Session videos, we will be starting things off relatively simple and then getting to more advanced poses towards the end of the video. Now it is worth noting that the material this guy is made out of is incredibly fragile, so if you do go ahead and copy some of these poses, do make sure you are exercising a little bit of caution. Don't leave him in the more dynamic poses for a long period of time, otherwise you very well may damage your suit. Also, if you really do like seeing Hot Toys and third-party content, unboxings, reviews, and also pose sessions, why not hit that subscribe and bell notification icon so you're notified as soon as brand new content goes live on the channel. Now I do have all of my required accessories laid out down below. I've got the squinting eyes and the web shooting hand because we will be going with a relatively straightforward web shooting pose. Someone recently did tell me that I should maybe step up my posing game just a little bit, and I get that. You can go really dynamic, and there are by far more expert level poses than me out there. But I like to keep it relatively simple because in my display, I don't really have the biggest amount of space available to go too crazy with the posing. And here we have our first pose in all of its glory, and I do mean that. I really like how this one has come out. It's simple yet super effective. It's classic Spidey. Now you will notice there are a couple of areas on the suit which do bunch up, so I wouldn't be leaving him in this pose for a long period of time. There are pretty much all of the joints working here. You see all the elbows have been bent, you see the creasing in the pants, so I do like to keep it a little bit more dynamic when I can, but without stressing the outfit. You can feel when you are posing him the sort of limit to which you can go without then stressing the suit, so do bear that in mind when you are posing your Spidey. Now with this one we will be going a little bit more back to basics. I want to see how far I can push a museum pose to where I still feel comfortable with the outfit, just because you don't really want him standing straight up and down. This is Spidey, you want him to at least look a little bit more dynamic, and the way I'm going to do that is by using this joint, the one in the head. Because it's separate, it won't actually damage the suit itself, so I can go a little bit more dynamic with the head without worrying about any creasing. Now I do find that when you are moving the suit, if you do push the legs a little bit too far, you can sometimes pull the outfit back in place, as you saw right there. You put a little bit of pressure pulling it downwards, and those creases should come out. And here we have the second pose, a more museum-style pose, but as I said, I wanted to give everyone out there an idea of how far you can go, looking dynamic, but also almost museum pose. It's not as simple as him just standing straight up and down with his arms down by his side. You can see he's clearly doing something. Maybe his Spidey sense has just been triggered. So it kind of does give this figure a little bit of life without looking too basic. Granted, there is a little bit of creasing behind the arms there, but it's not too severe. I'd leave this guy in this pose. In fact, I have in my cabinet for a few weeks now, and when I put him back straight up and down, he was perfectly fine. But then again, when it comes to this type of suit material, depending on how far you push it, your mileage may vary. Now with this one, we will be going a little bit more classic Spidey and way more dynamic. I would not advise leaving your Spider-Man figure in this pose long term. You will see some damage to the suit itself, but if you are really taken by the pose, I guess you could copy it and then leave your figure in that pose. It is going to have to be up to you. And here we have pose number 3, and as promised, we've gone a little bit more dynamic once again. Now unfortunately, I couldn't get him crunched as far down as I would have liked to get into that really iconic Spidey pose. I would have loved to have had his hand there on the ground, but due to the nature of the fabric, I didn't want to push it any more than this. This is already pushing it a little bit further than I was wanting to go personally. But if you do want to push yours even further and get him all the way down to that super awesome iconic Spidey pose, I reckon it's gonna look fantastic, but for me, I just didn't want to risk it. It still turned out pretty darn good. I'm happy with how this looks. Still wouldn't leave him like this long term on display, mind you, but it's a really awesome, dynamic, almost classic Spidey pose that really does work quite nicely for Spider Armor Mark IV. Now for this next pose, I am going to try and blend a little bit of dynamic, but also keeping it relatively safe for the suit itself. But as with all poses in this video, your mileage may vary, so please be careful. Now, I'm not going to switch out any of the bits and pieces on Spidey, I'm literally leaving him stock. I'm just going to be using the dynamic flight pole, and of course the Spidey display base. And here it is, pose number 4, the leaping pose. To be honest, I wasn't entirely sure how good this was going to look, but now that we have it in front of us, I think you'll all agree it looks pretty darn fantastic. And one of the core components about this pose is that it's relatively safe. You don't have any wrinkles or creases throughout the entire suit. If you have this guy in this pose for maybe a couple of days, put him back to just standing up and down in a vanilla pose, I reckon you're going to be pretty darn good. You can of course go a little bit further, bend the legs even further, have the butterfly joints push all the way back, and have an even bigger arch to the back. But I wanted to keep it relatively safe. Just know though, if you want to push this even further, you can definitely get it done. The only thing that I'd personally be worried about in doing this pose is that waist clamp. It will damage the suit, so if you are using it, either pad it out or find some other way of balancing him on this display base. Check out Posing with Peter's brand new channel for some tips and tricks with posing some of your figures in more dynamic poses and not using the dynamic flight poles. Now with this next one, we're going relatively all out. I'm going to do one as dynamic as I possibly can while still maintaining a bit of Spidey in the pose. You'll have to let me know what you think of these poses down in the comments below. Do you want me to keep going with the pose session videos? I really enjoy shooting them. I like seeing what the figures can do, even though I may not necessarily leave them in those poses long term in the display. At the very least, I can show all of y'all out there watching the videos what these figures really can do, because they can do some amazing stuff. Next up, we do have a relatively dangerous pose. What do I mean by that? Well, you can see that there are a lot of joints that are being used here, which is great for an awesome dynamic pose. You can see Spidey is leaping just off that 1 foot. You can see one is still on the ground there. He's about to shoot off a web and then, of course, start web swinging. It's an awesome pose. I love it. It's super dynamic. But once again, you will be wary of damaging the suit, so just please be careful with any of these poses. But for those of you out there who say these PS4 Spidey suit figures cannot pose, absolutely not true. He can definitely do it. It's just going to have to be up to you whether or not you decide to leave your Spidey in these poses. You definitely can get it done, as you can see in front of you right here, and it looks darn fantastic. But then again, you do have to have that personal choice deep down inside. Only you can know if you'll be able to leave your Spidey in this type of pose on your shelf. For this next one, we will be getting a little bit more playful. I am going to be trying to incorporate the Spidey Drone, the only real accessory this guy comes with if you don't count the webs and the light up pylons for the display base. But I have seen poses like this on Instagram previously. I'm basically going to have Spidey interacting with the dynamic flight pole as if it's a part of the environment. He'll be gripping onto it and he'll be sort of semi-talking to or looking at the little Spidey Drone. It can be challenging to balance this guy in the hand. It's not really meant for that. It's more meant as set dressing to place around the environment. But what I would recommend doing is to place your Spidey in the pose first if you really want him holding it, as I personally do, and then once everything is stable, worry about fitting the drone in his hand. As I said, I wanted something a little bit more cheeky, and I think I've achieved it. It's Spidey interacting with his own display base. It's kind of like a piece of the environment. It's holding him up, but he's also holding onto it, and I really like how that looks, it also makes for a relatively stable connection. Not that it wasn't already, the waist clamp is incredibly stable, but it makes him not as wobbly. You can also see he is holding the Spider Drone. He's giving it a little bit of a pep talk, if that's how you want to see it, or he's just setting it up, getting ready to throw into the nest of thugs that he's about to spy on. I really personally like this one. I know it's a little bit weird and wonderful and out there, but I think it works quite nicely. Let me know what you think of this pose down in the comments below, but as I said, I personally really like it. But that's about it for the pose session. I've really enjoyed posing Spider Armor Mark IV here. I cannot wait to keep going. Heavy Mando should be coming up very soon, and then of course we will be doing Endgame Cap. I know a lot of people are excited for that one, me included. I will be trying to do a pose session for every brand new Hot Toys figure release. I won't be focusing on third-party figures, and I won't be doing them on retro review figures. A couple of people have asked me to do that, but I'll just be focusing on new release figures. I think that's the best way to go, because as soon as people are picking the figures up, there should hopefully be some posing content out there. Now, if you do like posing content, as a lot of people do, I'm sure, you have to go and check out Posing with Peter. He's got a brand new channel, and his content is second to none, so definitely go and check him out. It's Posing with Peter over on YouTube, which technically you're already watching this video on. But that's about it. Like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next video.